Uncensored. Welcome to COASTER-net Uncut.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of COASTER-net Uncut. I am, of course, Andrew Barczyk, joined once again by my very good friend, Mr. Danny Miller, the now fully employed Danny Miller. Oh, no longer in college. Fully employed he is. How's the new job, Danny?
It's going well. I'm 2 weeks in now. For those of you who may be wondering, I am working at the Raymond Corporation near Binghamton, New York. Little bit of background: they are actually a subdivision of Toyota. They were purchased by Toyota in 2001, and we build and manufacture and design forklifts. So if you go to like Home Depot or Lowe's or big warehouses, you'll probably see Raymond forklifts driving around. So I'm working on doing a lot of engineering and design work in mechanical systems there, and it's fun so far, meeting people, learning different things about the company, learning different systems, so getting going, and already starting to look at my theme park schedule now that I know where I'm going to be. Already looking at some trips summer. I mean, we'll get into those later down the road. But and one of the parks that I gotta try and get to is going to be the park that we're going to focus on tonight. And my shirt isn't very appropriate. I'm actually wearing a White Lightning shirt. My sister and aunt just got back from Florida. They went down to Florida without me. But my sister's first time down at Diagon Alley at Universal. Got to ride White Lightning, and she picked up the shirt for me, but your shirt is much more appropriate because one of the parks that a lot of coaster enthusiasts know they have to go to this year is, once again, Cedar Point, because of that new brown and gray and oddie navy blue roller coaster that's going up there, Valravn. And, we did this show about this time last year. We did a 5-year plan projection sort of show for Cedar Point, and we said back then, when we know what's coming in 2016, we'll have a better idea of where we're going to be 5 years from now. So now we're going to do exactly what we said back then. We're going to do this show again this year, and now that we know what's coming in 2016, we're going to kind of look ahead for the next 4 or 5 years and maybe amend our predictions a little bit and talk about where we think Cedar Point might be going.
And the biggest thing with that was, we came up with this idea kind of like mid-show last year on the 5-year plan show. And we said that maybe for the big anniversary in 2020 that they were trying to achieve 20 roller coasters. And our main theory, our main treatise, if you will, was how do you get to 20 coasters? And really, the biggest problem in that equation was, where's the other big coaster coming in? Because we kind of went through it and we said, well, they already have 18. So if you count Pipescream, they have 18. So then, or excuse me, they have 17, right? No, wait. Well, what is it? I forget now. I'm confused.
Yeah.
So, okay. So the big question was where does 18 and 19 come from? And then 2020 would produce your big 20th coaster. So
we said that 2016 kind of had to be a coaster. Otherwise, they would have to build back-to-back years. They would have to build 3 coasters in 4 years, essentially, if they didn't build one in 2016, which even point to build, I mean, one would have had to either be like a dinky one or a kiddie coaster to really get away with 3 and 4. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, they kind of have already done that, because Gatekeeper in 2013, then you had Pipescream in 2014. They did the Rougarou thing, which was kind of a replacement, and now we have Valravn. So they kind of, according to their count, they did do 3 and 4 years. So, but Pipescream, whether or not you call that a coaster, okay, but the park does. But you'd probably have to have that sort of thing where you have kind of a smaller one in the middle. But will they do it again? I don't know.
Well,
so that's part of it.
So that's part of the discussion, but the big question is where does that big coaster come from? And that's kind of been solved for us with Valravn, like you said, is that Valravn takes that big one out. But at the same time, we were automatically assuming that the dark ride would be a roller coaster. And I think, a lot of the parks recently in the past year, Knott's Iron Reef Dark Ride has been received pretty well out there, and it's not a roller coaster. We see Cedar Fair moving into new realms that we talked about last week with the Mass Effect and the Plants vs. Zombies. Are those considered their dark rides? Because you look at Carowinds now, and Carowinds has the Plants vs. Zombies, plus it has the Sally Dark Ride, the Boo Hill already there at the park. So are they going to add another dark ride? Because said that every park's going to get a dark ride, but did he mean the Trio Tech? Did he mean the Guardian style, the Voyage or the Journey or the Iron Reef style? Did he mean those things, or do these new attractions count for those dark rides as well?
Well, and that's an interesting point, because with Carowinds and Great America getting these two things this year, the question is Cedar Fair happy with Triotech? Because, you would think if they're going to do some sort of dark ride experience, why would they not go with a strictly Triotech system like they have before? Are they not happy with the stories? I can't imagine they're not happy with the stories, because I think the stories have been pretty good. Are they not happy with the execution? I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell at this point.
Or is it just a matter of space that you look at these two parks, you look at Carowinds and California's Great America, and they have these huge open theaters basically serving no purpose. And well, let's give them a purpose. Let's put in something like a Plants vs. Zombies or a Mass Effect. You look at a place like Kings Island, and we're going to have this discussion probably on a future show on what Kings Island's going to do. They have a large open space to put a Triotech Dark Ride, but they also have an open theater. So I think what happens at Kings Island is going to be especially interesting.
And a big open box.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, is that's the big open space. So it's like, well, what do you put
Maybe
there?
Maybe I'll put in a Dark Knight coaster, mouse in a box.
God, I hope not. So moving that to Cedar Point now, that discussion is we kind of assume that by 2020 we're going to have a dark ride. That we've been talking about this dark ride for years. I sat at Disaster Transport's closing talking about a dark ride. We talked about a dark ride when Gatekeeper opened. We talked about a dark ride pretty much every flipping year since this discussion started. And
it's like, talk about it until we get it.
Yeah, but now the big question.
At some point we're going to be right, and we can say, "I told you so. I saw this 8 years ago."
So the obvious location for this dark ride now is the new Midway that they're building up, that Valravn Midway with Blue Streak Valravn, and to some extent Raptor is over there because one of the signature elements is right there, not the entrance.
Right.
But you have the old Pirate Ride building that's just sitting there vacant right now. It's being used as storage, and with them trying to build up this Midway, that becomes a logical place for a dark ride. Here's the problem, though. The problem is if you want that dark ride to be a roller coaster as well, you have a number of tracks there right now with Raptor, Blue Streak, and Valravn all kind of like on top of each other. Do you put in another lift hill for a dark ride? And where would that even go? And that's where it gets dicey.
Unless it's like an elevator shaft. If you haven't ridden Wonder Mountain's Guardian, then, mute us or skip ahead for about 30 seconds because there's a spoiler alert coming here. So what if you did the reverse Wonder Mountain Guardian thing, the reverse of what happens with Guardian, and put like an elevator style wheel in it, sort of like Lost Coaster of Superstition Mountain at Indiana Beach? Yeah. What if you did that sort of thing and use that as your lift hill? So it's not really a lift hill. You could just build like a shaft on that building and then maybe do a vertical expansion of that building to some extent. I don't know what that would cost, or maybe you build an addition onto that building. I don't know. I mean, that building isn't that tall. So
it's not, but I think you could get away with building it up just a little bit, and then what would you do? Would you have the elevator shaft then drop into your first element, like because you kind of do like a little twisty turny on Guardian outside.
Yeah, maybe it's something like that. The problem is, and I said to you before, the problem with Guardian is because it's outdoors and it has a high part outdoors,
Yeah.
it's prone to weather shutdowns.
Yeah.
And I would think at Cedar Point you would want to try and avoid that if you could. So if you could completely enclose it, that might not be a bad idea. So what you would have to do if you had some sort of vertical expansion of this building to accommodate a lift hill or some sort of elevator of some sort, then you would have to have it drop down closer to the ground right away. So maybe it starts out with a dark ride port, and then an interactive portion even. I don't know. Maybe I would assume that's what it would be, and then it turns into a little bit of a coaster for a while, and maybe there's some other screens going on, or maybe there's live props. I don't know. And then maybe it stops and then goes back into a finale sort of thing, sort of like with Wonder Mountain where you face the dragon, and then on Voyage to the Iron Reef you face the Kraken Queen at the end. So maybe in between those interactive portions you have some sort of coaster, and maybe the park does some sort of like if it's a pirate ride, maybe they talked about pirates, right? So maybe there's like a ship battle. There's a ship battle somewhere, and then this is me thinking on my feet here. Maybe there's some sort of interactive screen with a ship battle or a battle on different parts of the ship, and then your ship gets hit and it starts to sink, and that's the coaster part. And then it seems there's some live action where you're underwater and going through underwater, and then maybe there's an underwater battle with maybe like I don't know. Zombie pirates or something, underwater or something to that effect, or pirate ghosts or something, and then that's the last interactive part, and something comes out of that. I mean, maybe you could do something that route if you're going pirate theme. I don't know. That's just me thinking off the top of my head.
I think a nice little helix would be in line for that. So you would helix down to the next level. So if you imagine it, you would have a little part at the top with some stuff, and then you would helix down to the next level, and then you would finish up the story at the next level. I could see that happening. Now the other option is you don't put it there and you put it somewhere completely different in the park where you might have a lot more leeway to do whatever you like.
The question is, do they build a new? They would have to build a new building then?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of, it's kind of weird.
Unless the talk for a while was the arcade underneath, the main offices would turn it, but that would strictly be a dark ride. You wouldn't be able to do coaster there. So if it's not the coaster, then say 2017 is a dark ride, you would probably need a coaster in 2018, and then I don't know, maybe there's a water park expansion somewhere.
Yeah.
That's the other thing we kind of threw in as a filler, and then we get some big coaster in 2020. I think those I would say this as very high level here. I think at this point it's more questionable as to whether or not the dark ride, if there is indeed one coming, which you would think there would be.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's more of a doubt that that's a coaster now, because maybe they want to keep it completely separate from the weather and not have to worry about it. So I think maybe you have a dark ride maybe in 2017, maybe you have a smaller coaster in 2018, and maybe you're looking at some major water park renovation, and maybe that new coaster, or not the new coaster, but the new trains over in Japan on Titan 5, the Aero Hyper, got new trains from S&S, so maybe you're looking at new trains for Magnum somewhere in there. Maybe that's kind of a thing where they focus on the water park a bit more, and there's talk now that maybe they'll do some more hotel renovations, so maybe they'll couple some smaller improvements with that type of stuff in the off years, and then make it back in 20.
Let's go through this. So we know 2016 is Valravn. 2017, I think you're right. I think it's probably going to be this dark ride. I too am skeptical now that it's going to be a roller coaster because
I don't think it's a coaster at this point.
Yeah,
the fact that Voyage to the Iron Reef wasn't, and they had like a 2 or 3 story building to do at least something with it, and the fact that they didn't and kept it all up on that higher level. And kept, like, stores underneath and whatnot. The fact that they didn't go coaster there makes me think that maybe they were like, you know what, Wonder Mountain's Guardian is great, but maybe, again, spoiler alert, maybe that little surprise at the end wasn't worth the 50-foot investment.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't worth the money to keep the dark ride portion up higher off the ground. And the thing is, they already had a mountain big enough to do that and to keep it up there. So
I think we're right. And then the water park expansion makes sense because there's always this talk of them moving out Challenge Park with the go-karts being on their last legs, I think. Moving the Sky Coaster up towards the front of the park that everyone, there's no question about this, everyone has said how much better Slingshot has done because it's inside the park, that you just get people walking by, that they don't have to exit the park and get a hand stamp to go ride something and pay for it. That if you move Sky Coaster up towards the front of the park, give it a new lighting package, the stuff over in Orlando with those Sky Coasters looks pretty sweet. The way that they light those things up now, you do that. You Skyscraper,
it would be much better out in the actual park.
Skyscraper, and you have the space for it up front too, in the front of the park. So you take out some of those pavilions and you throw that down in there, and boom, you're done. Skyscraper, it was rumored that it would just leave altogether. Or be moved to a different park, or be moved up front with the Sky Coaster.
Put Skyscraper in like that maintenance parking lot between like the main entranceway and Gatekeeper's turnaround, like between Ocean Motion and Gatekeeper, back behind all those stores, and just extend the Gatekeeper path to keep going past those restrooms and the food back there.
Yeah, that can go anywhere. But anyway, if you do that, you open up a whole new section for something. And then there's always the rumor that on the other side, the Challenge Park golf course would be disappearing as well. So there's a lot of room there for a water park expansion. And
a lot of people even do that? Like, I see people there occasionally, but I feel like mini golf, it's like you do mini golf just about anywhere. I mean, you don't go to Cedar Point for mini golf.
Well, and the problem is it's mostly, it's not park guests going to do it. It's mostly resort guests going to do it. And it's not very expensive. You can usually get a buy one, get one free ticket for like $8 to $12. And the question is would it be more valuable to have something else on that real estate that takes up a pretty sizable chunk of land back there, that you could add, a whole water slide complex back there, and really expand.
That's where my water park idea comes in right there.
Yeah. So
we said that before.
On either side, or on both sides, or on one of the two sides, depending on what you do. It's kind of like it was good for a while, but I think it's run its course. And also, all of these things are beginning to show their age back there. So just as Soak City had to get the repainting of all of the slides because it looked a little outdated, looked a little, 1980s kind of look to it, all of those Challenge Park things are now becoming dated as well. And I don't think that they're turning the money like they used to. So I think it's time to get rid of them and put something new there. So that's the water park expansion. So you have the dark ride, you have the water park expansion. The other big question is, so let's say that those two things are interchangeable. The water park and dark ride are interchangeable. Probably one of them will come next year. We don't know.
And the other in 2019.
And the other one in 2019. So then the question becomes, what do you do?
2 years?
Well, yeah. So one of those 2 years is, I think we're still dealing with Mean Streak. And there's a whole bunch of ideas out there. And I think these ideas have become a lot more interesting over the past few months. In particular because, one, at Winter Chill Out last year, which is coming up next month, the tickets are selling out very quickly. So if you want to attend, you should definitely go check right now. I know a whole bunch of the times are already sold out. I haven't looked over the last few days, so it might be sold out completely already. But if you want to go, it's an awesome event for a great cause.
The air probably will be, I'm sure.
Well, it's most of the early times were still available. So like 8 o'clock, 8:30, those times were available still. All the later times were sold out completely. But anyway, at Winter Chill Out last year, they threw up this little teaser picture of Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City, which we all know is a wood RMC coaster. So the question becomes, is that something that they're planning? Is it directly tied to Mean Streak? But then, to tie on to that, we now have seen two parks go ahead with GCI and decide to retrack their ride and maybe add a few elements to the wood coaster instead of going the RMC ride. So the announcement of Legend this week.
Here's the thing. Before we get too far into that, the problem that I think people are forgetting when talking about Mean Streak is if we're talking about getting to 20 coasters, whether it's Iron Horse, didn't RMC come out and say they would not be doing they were done doing topper track renovations, they weren't just doing topper track renovations anymore? I think I remember seeing that somewhere where RMC said they wouldn't be doing straight up topper track renovations anymore. They haven't done one completely. They've done parts. But so we're either looking at Iron Horses, we're looking at ground-up wood coasters, or ground-up T-Rex, or Trex, I don't even know what they're actually calling it, but ground-up T-Rex steel coasters. So those are kind of the three things to look at from RMC. Now, here's the thing people are forgetting. If you do an Iron Horse treatment of Mean Streak, you don't get a coaster out of that. No. That is a one-for-one trade. You don't get an additional coaster out of that. So I don't see where that fits into the equation, and I think that's I just got this idea too. What if they take out Mean Streak altogether, and they come in and have GCI, or maybe it even is RMC, do a racing / dueling coaster of like the style of Gwazi or Lightning Racer, and maybe they set a record that way. It could be the tallest. It could be the tallest pair of racing. I mean, what's American Eagle? 125 feet or so? Isn't that like the tallest racing coaster in the world or something? I don't know what the tallest racing coaster in the world. I mean, Gemini is actually up there. But if they did it in the style of Lightning Racer or Gwazi, they could actually count that as two coasters. You know, not the way Gemini, they kind of just count as one. But they could maybe count that as two different coasters. It could be wood, it could be steel, I don't even know.
Could you even...
Then you get two coasters for one, so you do still get a +1 out of that. And you have a lot of land to do it.
Yeah, could you in theory change Mean Streak, Iron Horse it into two? Do like a reverse Colossus?
Do like a reverse Colossus kind of deal? I think so, because when you look at Mean Streak's layout, the lift hill support structure is pretty wide because of how high it goes. So you could maybe get two lift hills out of that. And there's not saying you couldn't build more structure, but when you think about it, Mean Streak doubles back over its path a lot. I mean, it's basically two complete loops, which is kind of like what Texas Giant was. And Texas Giant kind of does the same thing and doubles back over its path. So instead of one coaster that goes, in two complete loops, have two coasters that kind of stay with each other the entire time, and you still probably have a wide enough and strong enough structure to do that, because the coaster does cross over its own path and go into its own structure as it is. So you probably could do you could have a slightly shorter version of New Texas Giant and do the reverse Colossus thing and end up getting 2 coasters out of it. So that could be a possibility. Now, and I think there's enough play to do enough with the station and rebuild the station to the point where you could get a decent throughput from the station. So I think I don't think that would become an issue. I think he might be able to swing that.
I think so too. It'll be interesting.
And that would be a 2-for-1 trade.
Yeah. Now, the one option I don't think we're going to see is I don't think we're going to see the GCI option. And because of this, that Mean Streak, when that first lift till trim, when those trims are off that first drop, it's a pretty good ride. I love Mean Streak with the trims off. But I don't think if GCI comes in and if they put Millennium Flyers on it, I don't think it improves that ride so greatly that people would love it again. Now, and I said this on our forums.
It's not like Ghost Rider, where at one point was like a top 5 coaster, just 10 years ago.
Exactly.
It's not like that. People have not liked Mean Streak for a long time.
And I just made this point on our forums today that, hey, when you look at things like Ghost Rider and Legend, they are great roller coasters when they opened. And they stayed great until they got a little rougher. I would say Legend was still running great when we rode it for Hollywood Nights last year. It was amazing.
God, we love it. And you and I both rode Ghost Rider this year, and we both liked it.
Yeah.
So I thought Ghost Rider was still really good. I mean, yeah, it beats you up. Yeah, it's a little rough. Yeah, it could use some work. But at the end of the day, it's still a great roller coaster. People aren't saying that about Mean Streak.
Exactly. And I don't think they ever said it about Mean Streak when it opened up.
No, they never did.
Mean Streak was never in that discussion of being one of the great wood coasters. So to have GCI come in,
GCI did work on Mean Streak not 5 years ago. They did a big 2-year restoration of it.
Exactly.
So, I mean, if people are saying, "Oh, GCI could come in and do work on Mean Streak," hello, they already did.
They already did. And granted, the only thing they haven't done is put Millennium Flyers on it, but I don't think that's going to improve the experience either. That first trim on the first drop is still there, and I don't know how you shut that off. With the forces that's going to be putting on that structure, I just don't see GCI coming in. That it's either, for me, Mean Streak is either going the road of RMC, the Iron Horse, or it's being torn down. And to be honest with you, I don't see it staying in the same form either. That next year is its 25th, or excuse me, this year is its 25th anniversary. So. Like, I just don't see this ride staying in the same form come the next 4 years.
And here's the other thing to consider with this. Here's the other thing. You have, when you look at a ride like Texas Giant closed and was closed for over a year during its renovation. Now, we know that Wicked Cyclone was done fairly quick, Twisted Colossus was done quicker, but a ride like Mean Streak is going to need a lot of time. So it could make sense that they would announce the closing of Mean Streak at the end of this year, or towards the end of this year, at the end of its 25th anniversary. Because remember, Big Bad Wolf closed at the end of its 25th anniversary. Yeah. So we've seen, quote-unquote, iconic rides. I mean, I don't know if Mean Streak iconic, but because it's at Cedar Point, it probably is. But an iconic ride closing on an anniversary like that isn't an unheard of thing. Yeah. So wouldn't it be, you could have some big 25th anniversary celebration towards the end of the year, you could have a last ride auction, and you could have the announcement that it's being reborn in some manner without specific details, but say that it's a 2-year say that it's a 2-year project. I mean, people kind of knew what was going on with Texas Giant a long time before it opened. So I don't know how that would. I don't know how that would.
And you also wonder. You also wonder how much of Texas Giant took that long because it was their first one that they did. That it's probably a learning curve trying to figure out how to do everything, how to do it correctly. That we've seen them get a lot
Twisted
quicker.
Colossus went pretty quick, but Twisted Colossus didn't have a lot of track.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Is like what are they going to greatly decrease the length of the ride like they have been with a lot of these wood coasters that we saw Twisted Colossus lose almost half its track in the process.
Rattler lost a lot.
Yeah, so, New Texas Giant is one of the few rides that really kind of maintained its length and almost, I think, to its fault. That I think that's one of the reasons I don't like New Texas Giant is it's so long and drawn out and it just kind of does stuff at the end and it's kind of like, I'd rather be on to my next ride. So it's, Mean Streak, like I said, I don't see GCI coming in. I don't see the ride staying in its current form much longer. And I say that because you look at what the park's done. They have tried to fix all the big complaints in the park. People complained about Mantis. Oh, it's painful. Oh, we don't like it. What do? They put the floorless cars on it. Now, what's another one that they always complain about? It's Mean Streak. That's the next one that always comes up. It was Mantis, Mean Streak, or Mean Streak, Mantis. You choose which one people bitch more about. And now we have the opportunity
to hotel is outdated.
Well, they fixed that too. So we have the opportunity to do something different. Do you just build a completely new, a new iconic wood coaster out there on the lake, which could be just as cool if you do it right? Although I don't know if RMC is that company then, because RMC doesn't like building big lift hills. What did they do with Goliath? They made it into a steel lift hill. And people lost their shit.
Well, and the new renderings from Wildfire is going to have a steel lift hill.
Yeah.
On the note of things that people like to bitch about, people complained that Dragster and Raptor needed to be repainted, so they did that.
Yeah, they did that. Done.
So they did it with Millennium Force not too long ago too. So, oh boy, I mean, there's.
So really, in my mind, it comes down to two things. You're either going to Iron Horse the ride, or you're building a completely new wood coaster, because you're not taking down a wood coaster in that park. Or two wood coasters, have it be a racing coaster or something that could be just as iconic as anything else there. And in that area,
you could set records with that too. Especially with RMC, you could set all sorts of records. You could tallest and fastest racing/dueling coasters. You could set most inversions on wooden racing dueling coasters or whatever. Because I mean. Who has that, right? I mean, Nobody has a looping racing wood coaster, right? So you could have a first, you could have longest combined track of a racing, wood coaster. You could even do something like Twisted Colossus where it's one big wood coaster and knock the Beast from its pedestal as longest wood coaster. Maybe. You only have to hit 7,400 feet, and with that amount of, Mean Streak itself is like 5,000 and change, right? So, if you did two lift hills and made it 150 feet, even if it's not the full size of Mean Streak.
Mean Streak's already...
You could do some serious...
Mean Streak's 5,400. 5,400.
Yeah. So, you're already within 2,000 feet there, and if you had two lift hills, you could do some exciting stuff. And not have it just meander around. You would still have to do that, though. That's the thing.
Okay. So I think so far, I think within the next 4 years, we can see a dark ride. We see a water park expansion. We see the conversion of Mean Streak to something, in some form, Mean Streak's going to change. So that takes off another year.
So before we get to, the big piece now, the big piece that we kind of have to talk about, are you willing to say at this point that, okay, so how about this? Either the dark ride is a coaster in some form, or we have to get a +1 out of the Mean Streak project some way.
Well, not necessarily, because we also have this. So we have. Well, we kind of do. Yeah, we kind of do, because we have a dark ride, we have a water park, we have Mean Streak, and then we have 2020. So one of those three things, either they have to do two things in a year, or
unless the year of the water park expansion, we maybe get a family coaster or a kiddie coaster.
Yeah,
and maybe that's the improvement for the park. So, but between those 3 years, we have to get a +1 out of that somewhere. So maybe Mean Streak is a 1-for-1. You get a kiddie coaster out of the water park thing. There's an
unless we get
where you're going.
2 coasters. In 2020.
2 coasters, I knew he was going to say it.
2020, 2!
Well, and, people say, nobody ever builds 2 coasters in the same year. Well, it's happened a couple times. One of the really bad examples is Islands of Adventure, because when they opened, they had a couple coasters. Hard Rock Park, same thing.
Yeah.
The last time that I can remember... Well, okay, King Dakar 2005, El Toro 2006. So Great Adventure did back-to-back really big signature coasters, but that wasn't the same year. The last time that I remember 2 going in the same year, do you remember when it was?
Well, I know didn't Magic Mountain put in 2 kiddie coasters one year? They rebuilt one from New Orleans.
They did like Green Lantern, Speedy Gonzales, and the Roadrunner or something like that. And they ended up. But that was they announced those all at the same time, but it was like over the course of like 14 or 16 months, I think. The last time that I distinctly, and I'm going to bring up my interwebs here to make sure I get the year right, because I know it was right at the beginning of the millennium. And are you sure you don't remember when this was? Because I feel like you would remember this.
Oh, it was Great America. They put in Deja Vu and V2 in the same year, didn't they?
Vertical Velocity and Deja Vu, because Vertical Velocity opened up in May of 2001 and Deja Vu opened up in October, but they were both supposed to open in 2001. So, but again, when you look at that, those are 2 coasters. V2 probably didn't cost a whole lot. It's not that big. Yeah. And Deja Vu doesn't take up a lot of land either. So between those 2, you're probably looking at about what a big coaster would cost anyways. So it's 2 coasters in 1 year, yeah, but 2 shuttle coasters, 2 ones that don't take up a lot of land. So
no. I'm talking about 2. Now, you could in theory...
You're talking 2 big coasters.
Or you could in theory have a marketing campaign set up. Hey, we're giving something to the enthusiasts, and we're giving something to the families, are both the 2 biggest markets that we cater to. And maybe they open up...
That's not a bad idea either.
And maybe they open up a huge new coaster, and they open up a brand new kiddie area somewhere, or revamp one of the kiddie areas that they currently have. Kiddie Kingdom is getting to be a little outdated. Maybe you put in a smaller wood family coaster back there, or like we talked about that a few times on the last show. Maybe you put in any kiddie coaster back there. There's been a lot of additions lately.
Like a Gravity Group, like a Aurorasaurus or a Wooden Warrior. You could put something like that by back near Maverick. We talked about that before with the antique cars, because you still have a car ride up front.
Yeah, exactly.
Dinosaurs. That's the other thing. Dinosaurs are going to be gone at some point in this 4 or 5 year time frame too.
And that's the big question is when you ask, well, where can you put a really big coaster? Well, the obvious answer is you have to utilize the island. That's one option. You can utilize some of that space that we've talked about with the water park. It becomes a lot more dicey, though, because the question is where do you start it? How does it get there? And that becomes dicey.
Well, and you have Magnum's lift hill in the way over there, too.
Well, you have Magnum's lift hill. You have Gemini in the way, so you'd have to start it, like, next to Corkscrew and kind of shoot it that way and use that golf course area.
And you don't have a lot, but between the turnaround of Gemini and the lift Magnum, you'd have to kind of shoehorn it around.
Yeah, it gets real dicey. I think the more obvious answer is the next big coaster is going to have to utilize the island in some way, and hopefully that doesn't mean, because it takes us back one, the elimination of Iron Dragon, because that just takes us back steps. That doesn't help us.
Not on the island. I think you can avoid, because Iron Dragon only goes half the length of Drag Street. You can avoid that.
Yeah, and there's plenty of space back there, so you would have the entrance to this ride probably where the old paddle wheel was. You already have a building set up with queues, too, by the way. The queues are still back there, I think. Some of them, because some of them were taken out for the store. Maybe they're not back there anymore. Who cares?
Use the Dino Store as the station, or
exactly. Well, that's how it used to be.
Or the gift shop for it.
The Dino Store was the queue for paddle wheel. It was. So you would start it there, have it shoot. You could put it over water. That lagoon isn't being used for anything important anymore. You could have it even maybe go around the lagoon if you really wanted to. Geez, you could just have it built inside the park. And then you would build this other family coaster and have this dual marketing campaign, kind of what they do for Halloween weekends now. Hey, come for the day for the families, stay at night for the adults. And you have this dual marketing campaign for 2020. I still think it's possible. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's still possible that you get to 20 coasters. The easiest way is to make the Dark Ride a coaster, and maybe you don't put it where the Pirate Ride was. Another cheap way of doing it is maybe you don't do a water park expansion, that we're kind of just assuming there's going to be a water park expansion. Maybe there won't be a water park expansion, and maybe you do this kiddie thing on a separate year and have it be a complete marketing campaign. But like you said,
water park needs something, though. I mean, a lot of the water parks are getting new stuff.
Now you want to talk crazy? We can talk crazy. What if you add the water park into the park admission and you make it all one park? That's an option too. Yeah, they're gonna lose some money on that unless you raise the ticket price on everyone. So you raise every ticket $10.
People will still ticket price, you would think, right?
Absolutely. So if you make it all one area, maybe you cut back on some of that parking lot back there and you start a coaster inside the park and shoot it into what is currently the Soak City parking lot. They do use that parking sometimes for big events and for Halloween weekends, but honestly, at some point they're going to have to figure out the parking situation if they want to keep building big stuff, because they always find room to put it, but at some point that equation doesn't work anymore, where at some point you physically run out of room.
Well, at some point, and people have said this for years, but eventually if they want to keep doing coasters and not taking other ones out, because they're starting to run out of ones that they can actually take out, because,
you have a few.
The ones take out now, though, don't give you a whole lot of real estate. Corkscrew doesn't give you a whole lot of real estate. Iron Dragon doesn't give you a whole lot of real estate. Gemini does, but Gemini is so iconic, I can't imagine that coming out anytime soon. Quite honestly, they should just take out Raptor and put a flying coaster in its face, but...
So you're the jerk today that brings it up. Okay.
Well, you've been the jerk the last couple weeks, so I have to fire back.
Honestly, Mine Ride is
but eventually you got to go out into the parking lot. That's going to be the only. That's going to be the only option left, I think. And this is way more than 5 years down the road. But I think eventually you will start to hear rumblings of them talking about moving parking off of the peninsula to start extending the park. That becomes a logistical nightmare. But I don't don't know. Eventually, that's going to be the only option, or the park gets stale.
And I think you're right in saying that's a far way off, simply from the fact of they just built this brand new entrance with Gatekeeper. So you can't change. Gatekeeper loses something, I think, if it becomes just two pillars in the middle of the park as opposed to the front of the park.
You could build out on either side of it.
Yeah, but then that's a really long. That's like a really long walk. It's like you're walking half the park to get to the entrance to walk back. It's like, who would?
No, yeah, I mean that's not going to happen for a long time.
Yeah.
And the only one, but then to solve the what do you do to solve the parking issue? I don't know. I don't even know. You probably can't do, being out on the water like that. You probably can't do any sort of parking garage. Certainly not a big one.
And the problem with the parking garage, the issue with the parking garage has always been that the land would not support it because of the high water table, and it'd be very difficult to get something that heavy.
You could never get footings deep enough.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think there's still a possibility of 20 coasters in 2020. We've talked about a lot. But what might – so let's assume that they're building something big in 2020, whether it's the 20th coaster. I would be greatly disappointed. I've said this before. I'd be greatly disappointed if it wasn't something huge in 2020. I think the last thing we should talk about tonight is what is that big thing that could be in 2020. A lot of people –
well, here's the thing. The default is they have to take back the height and speed record. The problem is that's no longer just building taller than King Ka. That's building taller than Skyscraper, the polar coaster. You've got to do that. So, and I don't see Cedar Point just doing a polar coaster. So then the question becomes, what do you do? Because at that point you have to build a tower that big.
Well,
and you have to build a structure that is that big.
I think it becomes creative marketing, and they become very skilled in creative marketing that we saw at Carowinds again with Fury. They called it the tallest Giga Coaster, which is really a creative way of saying it's the tallest 300-foot coaster, but there's taller coasters out there. But the mass media didn't pick up on that at all.
It's the tallest coaster that's between 300 and 399 feet tall.
Yeah, exactly.
Of which there's only like 5 in the world. Let's forget about that for a minute. But okay.
So I don't even think the creative marketing has to get that creative. You just simply move tallest coaster to longest drop. And I think if you had a 450-foot drop coaster and did something that set speed records, that set maybe, because –
how do you do that without going taller, though? Because you can't go underground.
No, well, you go taller. You go 450, and that would satisfy. You don't have to go. You don't have to approach 500.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. So because King Ka's drop is 420. Yeah. So you would have. Yeah. So you would have to have longest. Okay.
And maybe you go 475. Maybe you go 500. I don't know. Maybe you set a new class of standard coaster and go 500.
And coin a term because the Polar isn't doing that. So maybe you kind of coin a new term.
Exactly. So the problem with that becomes the space, and where do you put it? I don't know if that fits where we're talking about out by Camp Snoopy, unless you take out Camp Snoopy. And I don't see that happening because they just invested all this money. So the question is space. The question's always been space. Maybe you take out some of the parking, that you have that whole marina parking lot. Maybe you shoot it out down the peninsula and you take out some of the parking and have it shoot outwards like Leviathan kind of does, or like Magnum does the opposite way. So you kind of like bookend it where Magnum shoots that way, this new coaster shoots the other way. I think Valravn gets in a lot of this because a lot of my previous theories were where Valravn currently sits is where you could really start something that does this.
And this is taking up a lot of that real estate that you were hoping for. So.
But then even so even if you did that, it would still ruin the skyline. So you don't ever want to ruin the skyline. If you started this where I was proposing you put the Sky Coaster over in the pavilions and have it shoot out as an out and back, then you kind of solve that and you start a whole new skyline and kind of get rid of that whole parking lot skyline, which is nothing. So there's places to put this. It's just you have to get really creative on where you put it, and you have to be willing to accept the loss of parking at some point. Either you accept the loss of parking in Soak City, or you accept the loss of parking up front somewhere. Those are your two options, really, of where to put this.
Well, and yeah, I don't know. It's tough. But here's the other thing that you got to think about is what do they put in, or what do they get that isn't too much like what they already have? Like, did they specify? Did they specify exactly what Dick Kinzel said this coaster that was in his plan was? Like, was it just another Millennium Force, or was it a 300-foot coaster that did something else? Like, what was it?
I haven't. It's funny that you say this because I just started my Dick Kinzel book today, so I'm in the pre-stages of that conversation. But from what I understand, he said he wanted. Now, if you don't know this, there's been a biography written on Dick Kinzel, and in it he has said that he wanted to put in another 300-foot roller coaster into the park. I think the presumption is that Fury 325 was going to go to Cedar Point. Maybe not that exact layout, but something that it was a B&M coaster that hit 300 feet, that went well above 300 feet, 325 obviously, and maybe even a little higher, that he had this whole plan laid out for this to happen. And instead, we got Gatekeeper. So
maybe it was your 300-foot wing coaster.
Now here's what I don't know. Well, God, yeah, wouldn't that be something? me and Dickie K. Now here's what I don't know. Was Gatekeeper put in the spot where this 300-foot coaster was supposed to go, or the book claims that was supposed to go in the back of the park? So Mean Streak, you lose another wood coaster, and there was also, before Dickie K left, those cabins, those brand new cabins that I stayed in this past Halloween weekends, which are really nice, by the way. Those weren't there either. So you could have used a lot of that space. I don't know if that space is there anymore, but there were plans.
It was tearing out Mean Streak, and it was going to be the first ever Giga Woody.
Oh, Jesus. Now you're just being silly.
With RMC, you could do it.
Well, yeah, you could. I think
it has a steel lift hill and a steel probably structure, but I mean, like, so does Voyage.
Yeah, seriously. I think we're going to see something big.
Too.
Oh, Jesus. But okay, but let's work on your theory for a little bit. Let's say that a big coaster is not going to happen. Are we okay with living in the world that Millennium Force will always be the tallest roller coaster, and Dragster, technically, the two tallest roller coasters in the park will always be those two? Are you okay living in that world? Because I'm not. I'm not okay living in that world.
Am I okay with it? Yeah, I would like to see it change. I don't know that under this new regime that's going to change anytime soon. I think, I mean, you're going to want to shoot me for saying this, but I think the big coaster, I mean, we know that Kinzel wasn't a fan of them, but we don't know anything about We Met.
Oh, Jesus.
What if he wants to do a flying coaster in 2020? It's something that people have said for years they don't have, and people want one.
Boring.
I'm not saying it's what it should be for 2020, but I mean, it's not too difficult to do records for that right now.
So are you? Well,
you have to beat Tatsu.
Yeah, like whip-de-doo.
Right.
But
Well,
in the overall scheme of things, I just don't see that. If given the choice between a coaster on the level of Fury, which is by far a top 5 roller coaster by all accounts,
Mm-hmm.
a flying coaster is never going to reach that point. Is never going to even be in the discussion of top 5 anywhere. It's just not. I don't.
Well, here's the other question. When you look at the regime of Met, you say, okay, Banshee was a big coaster for Kings Island. Then you look at Fury and say, okay, if we gave Carowinds their version of Millennium Force in the Southeast, okay. Gatekeeper and now Valravn, this is all under Met now. Would a record-breaking flying coaster in the same style of a Tatsu or a Manta or like a Starry Sky Ripper, would a coaster like that be better than Gatekeeper and Valravn? The answer very well might be yes.
But that's not the question. The question is, will it be better than Millennium Force and Maverick?
I don't think
the answer is no. The answer is no, it won't.
I don't think you're getting better than those two.
Yeah. And that's my problem is you need Dick Kinzel had a simple philosophy that's already clear in the first 30 pages that I read. And the philosophy was he built Corkscrew.
I read this book too.
You have to. So he goes through the whole story of his first roller coaster, which was Corkscrew. And he went to Ron Toomer and said, this is what I want. I want a corkscrew roller coaster like they have at Knott's in Opryland, and I want you to add one element and make it bigger and taller, and you can come talk to me. And he did that, and you know what happened? They set attendance records. Then he goes to Gemini. He goes back to Toomer. He says, I want it biggest and tallest. Does it? You know what they did? They set attendance records that year. It's a simple theory.
They set the largest attendance record ever, and everyone hates Raptor now. So
get the hell out of here. But that's the theory. That's the theory. You're gonna set. Cedar Point has proven that when you put in a new coaster, it's gonna set records. It's Gatekeeper spiked the attendance. It'll be interesting to see what happens this year with Valravn. But it's when you do something truly unique. Now, Millennium is that outlier because Millennium kind of set records, but they thought it would beat Raptor's opening, and it didn't. So that's kind of like the problem that I think that everyone's like looking at and saying, oh, I don't know, like maybe there's a maximum saturation point. A lot of people were upset with Banshee's opening. That Banshee didn't move the ticker, the attendance, turnstile as much as they thought it would.
Opening day was a huge hit, but the rest of the season they had mild attendance.
Yeah.
I mean, they had improvements, but probably not quite on the level they were hoping.
Like I said, it didn't move the turnstile as much as they would have hoped it did. So I think there's that out there. But when you're Cedar Point, I think you have to start – it's not about variety. A lot of people are like, well, if Dick Kinzel would have built the other 300-foot coaster, you would have Millennium and whatever in the same thing. And wouldn't they be too similar? And I'm like, no, they wouldn't. People are calling for a second wood coaster, or a third wood coaster. Wouldn't that be too similar to the two you already have? Like, come on, get out of here. It's not. They're different rides. Get the hell out of here.
You're telling me you put an outlaw run at Cedar Point, it's too similar to Blue Streak and Mean Streak? You're crazy.
It's a coaster.
You're on Raptor sauce.
No, but I'm saying that if you're telling me that you would not want a Millennium Force and Fury 325 in the same park with each other.
I would love to have them next to each other because then they're not halfway across the country from each other.
Exactly. Like if that's not if you're not getting great dreams over that right now, then I don't know what type of enthusiast you are, because that seems to me like my perfect world is having two great coasters like that in the same park. I think that's what we need in 2020. That's my personal opinion.
So you must love Hershey Park then, because Wildcat and Lightning Racer are two great coasters right next to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that argument made, never.
No, they literally are great coasters.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Holy hell.
Oh, did you just get that now? I thought you got it the first time.
No, I didn't. Yeah. I don't get my wood coaster jokes like you do.
I guess not. Well, you're the one who thinks that Outlaw Run and Mean Streak and Blue Streak would be too similar. So
yeah. So I don't know. So let's kind of put a cherry on this one here. Is there going to be 20 coasters in 2020?
I hope so. I'm going to say no because I don't trust WeMet to do it right.
I'm still going to say
I don't trust management to be as smart as you and I.
Well, that's bingo. Okay. Here's my statement. I still believe there's going to be 20 coasters in 2020. Otherwise, why are they making such a big deal over having 18 coasters right now? Yeah, it's a marketing campaign thing, but they're making a huge deal about pipe screen being 18, and the question is why. There has to be an end game there. So I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to refrain myself and saying that I think we're going to get something more of what you're proposing in 2020 with the longest and tallest flying coaster or something like that, or
of some sort of type like that.
Yeah, some gimmick coaster, like maybe this VR coaster thing takes off, that we see Air over at Alton Towers.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Air is becoming Galactica. Maybe you create a coaster with that in mind, with having it be a VR.
Versions, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's coming. I'm hoping for something big. I love Fury, and the thing that upsets me most about Fury is that it's 16 hours away from me, and I'm probably not going to get to it a whole lot.
It's about 10, 11 for me, so
yeah.
I feel you there.
So, it's going to be interesting. I think there's a lot of opportunity. There's always the opportunity of having the dark ride be a coaster. There's always the kiddie coaster idea, maybe the 2 coasters in 2020. I think that's still an option. I really like that marketing campaign. I think you could really sell that, the 2 perspectives on Cedar Point. I don't know. But I think what we have on paper, I think Dark Ride, Water Park expansion, Mean Street change, either destruction or change, and then some sort
maybe
of
a +1 out of that.
Yeah, maybe a +1 out of that, but then having some sort of coaster in 2020.
I just got another idea. Okay. What if, and this goes right along with, how you're wrapping up here. Valravn, right? What if we get a VR coaster, or the dark ride / coaster, we then get a kiddie coaster, and then, or one or the other. We get one of those in 2018, and then, say, 2020, the Mean Street with a +1, the conversion that gets you an extra coaster, maybe that becomes the 2020 project.
And what if you tear down Main Street and you take all the wood coaster titles, the tallest, longest drop, and you just set all the records for a wood coaster? Because really, it's not a huge. You just have to basically top 200 to get
Well, right. So what if you did this? What if you say the Dark Ride coaster is 2017. Maybe in 2018 you announce that Mean Streak is closing. For 2019 you build a kiddie coaster, but Mean Streak is already torn down, so the kiddie coaster is still the 19th. And then the new wood coaster becomes the 20th.
Yeah.
Then the +1, then you don't need a +1 to get the 20. because you did that 20, kind of like how Sky Rush was their 12th coaster, and then they tore out Roller Soaker, and then Coco Cruiser became the again. You could do that, like how Gatekeeper became 17 because they tore out Disaster Transport and they tore out Wildcat. So Gatekeeper was technically 16 again, right?
Well, yeah, because if you move Mean Streak to 2020, then you open up that year that we were using Mean Streak for, and then you could build the kiddie coaster.
You could build a smaller coaster and still have the Mean Streak project become 2020, and there's your big plot of land to do something really big.
Yeah.
Campbell's, good possibility.
Well, I think we've had a lot of fun here this evening. You know, I'm excited, and you know, the problem is every year we say this. We say, well, when we know what happens in 2016, all the other pieces are just going to fall into place. And we said that last year, and here we're sitting here this year, and the other pieces haven't really fallen into place for us. So,
well, we know what this year is. We're getting one coaster, so we got to figure out where the other two are coming from.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on another episode of COASTER-net Uncut with the Cedar Point. Now it's the 4-year plan. Hopefully you had fun as well. You know, I'm still arguing that they should just clone Raptor and put it in the back of the park. That way, no matter where I'm at, I can just ride Raptor on either side of the park, and I don't have to walk to the other side.
Yeah. Well, you know, you're crazy, but that's okay. So the one other thing we do have to mention before we go is we're doing the sale on the calendars. We got a couple left, right? So we can get
we got a couple left, so you can see that
price. And also by the time right there. So by the time this gets to air, you only have a few days left to vote in the coaster poll that's closing at the end of the month of January. So make sure you get those in. The link to the Google form is on. I made a Facebook event. It's in the forums. I can bump that topic if you so please. And I'll be posting those on Facebook and Twitter probably this last week, the days leading up to the end, because the Thrilling 32 is coming up soon, the selection show, and then the brackets, so that's coming very shortly as well. We have over 150 people who have voted in this year's poll already, which is really, really nice. So thank you to everyone who has participated in that so far. So anything else before we part ways for the evening?
No, you know, I guess, as always, I am Andy Roberchek from Chicago, Illinois.
And I am Danny Miller, coming to you from Schnecksville, Pennsylvania today.
And, as always, right on, Ride Warriors.
See you next time, folks.